Demon Hunter War. I'd give you a little bit more if I didn't have to worry about, censorship bullshit. But, given that was just the beginning of the album, but there are, this is one of two albums they have released from a very well-noted American Christian metal band, originally known to have been new metal with certain derivative styles of metalcore, but eventually they started to embrace more of the metalcore style, and then just started, or at least they changed from being more new metal to alternative metal, and embracing elements, or at least becoming more metalcore, and then deriving elements into that, in that more melodic metalcore way, where they're basically relying more on elements of melodic death metal, while lacing also some more hard rock and alternative metal layerings on top of that as well, for their particular brand of melodic metalcore. Though they also do kind of tend to be considered groove metal. Some metalcore bands do, and they kind of do here and there. This would technically be their 9th studio effort. And, this is a two-parter. Right now we're focusing on more. They have split albums up. This is the heavier of the records, definitely more closer to the more closer in, and it's definitely a heavier side. Not even more so sonically. Sure, they kind of have their moments with tracks like Gray Matter and even Leave Me Alone, but they do get, for the most part, where they stick more on the cleans, but they do definitely get more in the growls and screams in terms, or at least more so growls, I guess, or like the more gravelly type screams, I guess, with this record. Cut to Fit on my side, The Negative is probably one of the better tracks, and it definitely seems the most... I mean, they've been at it for a while, and I'm almost willing to say that with this new record, I kind of sort of want to say that this is probably by doing so, in splitting this up, they've actually been able to focus in on those sides separated, by separating them and focusing them on one particular effort at a time, as opposed to trying to putting it all together into one. And each album seems to kind of conceptually be more so about death. The Negative is more specifically using the phrase from the chorus, everyone starts in the negative, almost referring to the whole thing with Adam and Eve, in the sense of how ever since what happened with Adam and Eve, we as human beings have been born in the concept of how we've all become born, even to some sense of even Judaism, not just Christianity, given that some of what the first 5 books that are involved in the Torah are also shared to some extent with us in Christianity on all fronts, Catholicism and Protestantism included. If I'm putting that correctly, or even schismatic, but that's kind of here nor there. But let's not get too political, while religious at the same time here. But anyway, as far as Demon Hunter is concerned, I really enjoyed this album. I enjoyed this release and another. I'll eventually get to it. Cut to Fit was great. The Negative is a great one. Ash I still like it. And it took me a while because it kind of starts to sound like something else, because the consonation, the way it's kind of done, a consonant is missing, or at least in pronunciation. If you're going to say ash, it kind of, the sh is missing, and it sounds like literally them saying the word The only time I will say it in cursing, since I'm talking about a Demon Hunter, a Christian band, technically, would be the word ass. Though technically it is in the Bible when they're referring to, you know, a donkey, essentially. More specifically during the time frame of what is celebrated mostly within the Catholic Church as Palm Sunday. Or certain schismatics here and there. Maybe some SXPX types, and so on and so forth. Some that were technically schismatic eventually became part of a certain form of liturgical rite that's still allowed as being part of the church. Sorry if I'm getting once again political about it, but this is just in case if I have friends. But anyway, overall, dudes, I really did enjoy. I did enjoy most of it deals within death itself. This one dealing more within war itself, while the other album that I'll talk about deals in, well, that's where Grey Matter Leave Me Alone does it. Negative's great. Lesser Gods definitely has one of the heavier choruses. Despite my feelings on the way the vocals are done in the verses are a little off-putting, and I don't really understand why Ryan Clark needs auto-tune, or at least even if he is considered having to rely on auto-tune with some of his vocals, if at all. I would say this is so blatantly obvious in a way that's kind of off-putting, but the chorus still always does enough to save it, especially from lyrical content. If I can pull it up here while holding this thing. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix this bad boy. With the lines of... With such a line as, here we stand to turn the face to us, sacrifice yourself or bow to lesser gods. Lines like that are do show that you can still be, how you can be a Christian band and still be pretty heavy, you know, as this album pretty much proves in its own right. And it still remains consistently heavy in places, and I think No Place for You Here has some moments where it is kind of, I don't know if I can say progressive, but maybe I could say genty. Almost sort of bordering progressive metalcore to the gent extent, here and there. Or at least, if not genty, maybe something almost Gojira-esque? Maybe? Which even that is kind of for even Demon Hunter, given the Christian band standards, is actually sort of complimentary, if you think about it. Who wouldn't want, at this day and age, with this decade, even with their last album being considered the lesser among the band's bodies of work, even when your lesser bodies of work are still worth praising, even if it's not considered your best, I mean, that says something when it comes to Gojira. And if you're being compared to a band of that kind of caliber, yeah, you're doing pretty well for yourself, especially, or at least and that's kind of, Grey Matter is definitely one dealing with some deal with actual war itself, and then some kind of in the sense of war, at least that it's more conception. If anything, the concepts that they do go with on this and the other album I will be talking about is going to be kind of in depth, or at least in the sense that of how it affects you mentally from war, which is more their heavier side, which sonically it seems all across the board on this and the other record is amazing. Though somehow the follow-up I'm going to talk about is even more impressive in some ways, because this is kind of obvious for people who know that Demon Hunter excels on the heavier side, somehow far more than their own melodic side. But it seems this time around, when they have a chance to focus on it more, they actually bring it more. And that album is... And overall, before I do get to that, War itself, horns, it's actually pretty darn good. I'd say that between this and what we got out of the other album, which I'll talk more of, but anyway, that album, it being... Also, both albums, by the way, this is Demon Hunter's Peace. By the way, both albums seem to have a similar starting point. As you can see, the more melodic side there. This is the more melodic side of the band's album. They still don't technically go away from heaviness, but it's clear with this record, it's definitely more focused on the more melodic side of the band and the more clean, and it's definitely, in comparison to the other album I talked about, War, that one's more growlier, and this one focuses more on the softer side of the band. And it also, apparently each album also has one bonus track I have yet to hear. I might say something in the comment section below on those, because I don't have those, and I wish I did. I really kind of wish I did. And I'm starting to wonder, with just having listened to what I've already heard here, just on their normal standards. And I'm going to just say this right now. This record, what it makes up for is more layers sonically. Like, they go into other moments in the territory that I don't know if I've heard them possibly do since possibly Carry stuff off of their, more so their Storm the Gates of Hell, in the sense of Carry Me Down, where they, especially in the sense of using some experimenting and using acoustic guitars, and maybe even using piano balladry to some extent on some songs, which the final track, Fear Is Not My Guide, does do. I think Bet My Life is the one that is, it's between that, Two Ways of Risking Myself. I'm trying to remember which one exactly. I mean, When the Devil Comes is definitely the one that's definitely more focused on the acoustics, and then eventually it builds itself up and then brings in the heavier guitar sound, the more distorted guitars, which are definitely definitely a lot smoothed out there. That kind of heaviness is more closer to is sort of still kind of rectified, but in that very more Metallica Black Album, with maybe a hint of Brown sound kind of elements in that regard, I guess. Which I guess is sort of in a way of saying that, in that way that I guess would also work kind of for the softer side of Pantera. But anyway, like more in that Cemetery Gates-ish kind of way, possibly. Which I would definitely go into that kind of realm. Like what I mentioned about songs like Grey Matter and Leave Me Alone, you get a lot more of those kind of elements of more melodic heaviness, types of heaviness, more melodic, more hard rock oriented, as opposed to more alt metal in that hard rock sense, as opposed to that more thrashier groovy, more death growly style. This one definitely relies more on cleans, except for maybe one track. I'm guessing it's Better My Life for Two Ways. I'm trying to remember. There are, I think, some point after, like, I feel like after Peace, you'd think it almost kind of does try to dip in its quality, but then when the devil, like the track When the Devil Comes, which, as the chorus states, it's like more when like that part of sin comes into your life. Let me try to, and like More Than Bones. The weird thing is sometimes some songs kind of in certain orders of the way the track listing is, at least in title, seems sort of ironic between the two albums here, with this one saying Cut to Fit, first track being called Cut to Fit, and this one's called More Than Bones. Which I'm looking too far into it, because after the point when you get to the title track on Peace, and then you get to More Than Bones, it kind of seems to and try to compare that to Unbound. That's when it starts. That's where I think it starts to kind of differ, or at least in the sense, except for maybe the final track, in the sense of like maybe Lesser Gods, and Fear Is Not My Guide. But other than that, I'd say for the most part it's kind of like On My Side, I Don't Believe You, Loneliness, Close Enough. I'm reaching in that regard, but it's almost kind of in a weird, ironic kind of way, which I'm not even sure if it was intentional or not. But, and then I think, like, Fear's Not My God is very, very more piano-oriented, and it works, and his cleans are straight there. There's no auto-tuning or nothing. It works super well for him. And they do kind of balance out some of those more elements, and they do kind of go on the heavier side, but it's definitely more melodic, more hard rock-oriented. But still kind of metal, but in that alt metal, radio, more friendlier kind of way. This record seems to, focus more on that. And it works far better than what it would for other records. I feel like this was probably the best next step, because after Outlive, I wasn't really too sure what they could do next anyway. After a while, I guess, I think at that point they kind of did all they could, and I think they figured that out and decided to do this double album, in a more compositionally conceptual or thematically kind of way in doing those two album specifics. And overall, I do enjoy this album. And When the Devil Come, the way it's done is more in a way that kind of, I wouldn't even go as far as to just say Cemetery Gates. I would even go as far as to kind of compare to some ideas that seem to have worked really well in case of Myles Kennedy's solo album Year of the Tiger, in some places, in a way, or at least in a certain way. I would go that far and say that. So in that sort of almost folk rocky Americana, while still kind of maintaining a certain sort of southern rock-esque vibe to it, rock, still adding in a little more of a southern metal edge with the distorted guitars and stuff, though. So maybe if there wasn't enough of that for the Myles Kennedy record, maybe this track might do more of that for you in a more Cemetery Gatesy kind of way. My comparisons may not be accurate, but hopefully this works. But overall, and of course, I'm not sure if I'm not gonna. Though it is a weird how the band chooses to kind of end this album off with a line like, "When time outruns my soul, fear is not my guide, death is on my side." I feel like it's, instead of letting war be the thing that ends this all, in a way it kind of does end, is the part that I think is kind of the more interesting aspect of it. And plus, Ryan Clark still always finds a way to take his initial original design of the band's logo and always finds interesting ways to always, do different things with it. This one being, since it's sort of a double album thing and concept, takes that same one but relies on one form of death being more gruesome, which war is in and of itself, and peace, and one that's a little less gruesome looking, and it's more death in peace, having actual rested in peace in that regard, as opposed, and is definitely a little bit more appealing looking in nature as opposed to, this one. So, but overall, I feel like they've found a way to properly balance both and bring in certain elements that work. And overall, like with Peace in and of itself, I'd also say it rocks, and I'd love to hear the bonus tracks on both those albums to see which would hold up better in deluxe edition form at some point. I may get back to you on that. But, as far as I'm concerned, that's what works about these two albums the best. is that it's best to kind of listen to them back to back in the order that is given, which is War and Peace. And if you want to know, you can just easily look at your number thing here, and it'll probably tell you the proper order, especially given the numbers. The final two numbers, I guess, on that would probably tell you which goes first, I guess, which is War, and then Peace. And that's probably, and it's even more interesting in the sense that sometimes in this weird, cruel, especially given how this weird, cruel world is, sometimes peace comes at a certain point sometime after war itself, you know, in a weird, contrasting way. But overall, again, both these albums, given their 9th and 10th studio efforts, now they have 10 albums total within this past 2 decades, literally almost being 20 years as a band. And I don't know if they can do anything more right now, and if they have to wait for another 4 years, or if they for some reason decide to just either just stop making studio efforts for a while and just winds up having to take a hiatus for a brief period. After working on these 2 albums, there's these 20 to 22, if you include the bonus tracks, worth of material, if not more, then I hope it works out. Hold on a second. But overall, I enjoyed this record. These albums, War and Peace. What did you think of them? Leave a comment below, let me know. As always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. I'll see y'all in the next video. This video, despite my minor complaints, I really do enjoy these, and so far I think these are the albums that I actually want to come back to the most so far this year, actually. Who would have thought it'd be Demon Hunter? But yeah, if you leave a comment below, let me know, what did you think of these 2 Demon Hunter albums? Did you probably think they're better than what we got out of Black Album anyway? If you would rather prefer listen to this over that, I mean, I understand if you also listen to Teal Album over Black Album, but anyway. Enough of the Weezer talk. I already did enough of that in the last review. But anyways, if you like these albums, leave a comment below, let me know. As always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. I'll see y'all in the next video, which will hopefully be me catching up on 3 albums I was supposed to do in February. Just to give you a nice little preview, those are the albums. So, yeah, I didn't open this one yet, but I've already kind of listened to it through like Bandcamp and YouTube, and given that it's a record label, that's through YouTube. But anyway, that's it. Once again, for the 3rd and final time, hopefully, rock that like button with thrust if you must. Also do the same as well as follow me on my Facebook page, which link should be in the description below. If it don't work, I guess you should let me know and I'll figure out a way to fix it at some point. And yeah. And as always, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking, and I'll see you pretty much in the next video. Take care, y'all.